A wine glass chimed, twice, though no one touched it. Welcome to Faded Echoes. I am your host, Ombra. Tell me where you're listening from. I love seeing this community connect. Your comments always brighten these mysteries. Let's dive in. It was a Tuesday, dull enough to qualify for a civic medal. The weather was cooperating with the gloom. Up in the plant rooms, the orchids were getting their steam treatment like pampered opera stars. And down in the dining room, I was watching Nero Wolfe address a plate of braised veal and morel mushrooms with the attention other men reserve for their firstborn son. We were midway between the veal and the cheese when the bell rang. Not the phone. Wolfe's private line hadn't dared intrude on lunch in living memory. The front door bell. It made its usual well-bred announcement from the hall, but it also did something else. On the table between us was a wine glass. It was about half full of a Riesling that Fritz had given an introduction so reverent you'd have thought the bottle had been signed by St. Peter. When the bell sounded, the glass gave a faint, clear ring, like a nervous understudy chiming in a beat late. The sound was small, but in the peace of Wolfe's dining room it stood out. It was there, and then it was gone, and Wolfe's black eyes flicked to the glass. He didn't comment. He doesn't acknowledge minor phenomena until they grow up and learn to vote. He lifted the glass, took a sniff, rolled the wine in his mouth, and swallowed, all without looking at me. Then he set it down again, precisely, and went back to the veal. The bell rang again. The glass rang too. There, I said. Proof positive. Civilization's fading and the glassware's nervous about it. Wolfe shot me a glance that was either reproach or indigestion. Pooey. Twice is coincidence until it is not. Finish your lunch. When you start composing epigrams about coincidence, I worry. Want me to go see who's plucking at our door? You do not need my permission to answer the door in this house, Archie. You need my permission to admit people. Right now, all I've admitted is that I'm curious. I pushed back from the table. Besides, whoever it is will stand on the stoop until your cheese course curdles. I doubt that's covered under the Geneva Conventions. He grunted, which could mean anything from agreement to condemnation of the human race. That was my cue to leave him alone with his veal and his thoughts, in that order of importance. In the hall, I checked myself over, purely for morale. Tie straight, shoes respectable, expression alert and not yet insolent. Then I opened the door. The woman on the stoop made me glad I'd bothered. She was somewhere south of 40 and north of 30. Tall enough that I didn't feel like I'd been demoted, with dark hair pulled back in a way that said she knew exactly how good her bones were and didn't intend to clutter them with curls. Her eyes were gray and steady, and she had the look of someone who has dressed for an appointment she might not enjoy, but intends to win. "Archie Goodwin?" she asked. "That's the rumor," I said. "We take in laundry and lost causes. You don't look like laundry." Her lips twitched. "I'm expected?" "Nobody's expected at this hour, but some people are endured. Do you have a name, or do you prefer to keep it as a bargaining chip?" "Elena Vardas. I have an appointment with Mr. Wolfe." 2 o'clock. I'm early." I checked my watch. 1:32. Fritz's veal had been punctual. She had not. "You're not early, Miss Vardas. You're a time traveler. Mr. Wolfe does not acknowledge minutes that fall between 1 and 2. But since you've made the journey, come in and sit while I try to persuade him that the clock didn't stop." I stepped aside and she came in, a faint trace of something floral and expensive coming with her. Not orchids. Good. Wolfe gets proprietary about competing fragrances. I led her to the office and opened the door. The big yellow chair was empty, of course. Wolfe doesn't defy his own schedule. He merely bends everyone else's around it. I motioned her to the red leather client's chair. "Take a load off," I said. "I'll break the news to him that you're assaulting his sense of order." As I started for the dining room, she said, "I'm not sure if assault is the right word, Mr. Goodwin, but I suppose you'll decide that. I rarely get the final vote. I told her, but I'll submit a strongly worded advisory. Back in the dining room, Wolfe was at the cheese. It was a camembert that Fritz had once snatched back from me with an anguished howl when I reached for it with the wrong knife. Female, I said, closing the door behind me. Attractive. Serious. Claims she has a 2 o'clock appointment under the name Elena Vardas. She is, however, the head of the orchestra. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. Vardas? That's what she told me. You have reason to believe she's impersonating herself? He chewed. Wolfe considers speech during cheese a sacrilege except in emergencies, but names of potential clients about to breach his sanctuary qualify as emergencies. At 2 o'clock, he said finally, I have agreed to see a representative of Vardas and Leclerc. Wine people, I said. The name was familiar. Even in my line of work, you pick up the brands that pay for half-page ads in glossy magazines showing bottles reclining on velvet like centerfolds. And she says she's Vardas, the whole firm all wrapped up with a bow. She said so, he demanded. I didn't frisk her for corporate charters. She looks like she belongs wherever she happens to be. He wiped his lips and put down the napkin. That meant that lunch, for all practical purposes, was over. Fritz was going to have feelings about that. I have 26 minutes, Wolfe said. She may wait in the office. You will give her water if she asks, and nothing else. If she is indeed Elena Vardas, she has already given too much to the bottle industry. What if she asks for a drink? I inquired. We have that nice Riesling. No. Short, flat, and unequivocal. The wine is mine, and lunch is not yet concluded. He picked up the wine glass, his thumb and forefinger poised around the stem, thick and precise, and for a second I thought he was going to ring it like before. Instead, he took a long swallow, set it down with a care that would have made a jeweler proud, and rose. Well, I said, if you're abandoning dessert, she must really be something. She is something, he said. That is not in doubt. The question is what? He lumbered toward the door, and I went ahead to open it, since the hinges aren't insured to handle both Wolfe and a doorknob at the same time. By the time we reached the office, Miss Vardas had done exactly what I expected her to do. She had taken in the books, the globe, the wall map, and then settled her gaze on Wolfe's empty chair, as if it was a throne awaiting coronation. When Wolfe filled it, she straightened only a fraction, but enough to show she understood the program. Wolfe lowered himself, arranging his bulk in the big chair as only he can do it. Slowly, heavily, with the suggestion that if gravity failed him, he'd sue. He folded his hands on the curve of his middle and regarded her. Miss Vardas, he said. Yes. Thank you for seeing me, Mr. Wolfe. Her voice had a European edge to it, not heavy, just enough to remind you bottles cross oceans before they reach your table. I'm eating, he said. You're early. Explanations? The average visitor gets flustered when confronted with Wolfe before he's had time to digest. Miss Vardas didn't fluster. Her mouth firmed and her eyes flashed once, fast, before her expression smoothed out. I apologize, she said. Punctuality is a professional habit. In my business, schedules are precise. Auctions wait for no one, not even Nero Wolfe. Auctioneers, he mused. Merchants who sell things to men who are willing to pay more than they need to prove they can. I am familiar with the breed. I don't handle furniture or paintings, she said. My firm deals exclusively in wine. Yes, Vardas and Leclerc, founded in Paris, transplanted to New York 15 years ago. You are the Vardas. The Leclerc is a man with more charm than capital. That got a blink out of her. You do your homework. No. He shut his eyes briefly and opened them again. I remember things. It is different. Why are you here, Miss Vardas? She turned in her chair, a small motion to align herself more directly with him. She was composed, but the knuckles of the hand resting on her bag were white. Because, she said, Someone is trying to destroy my business, not with a bullet or a bomb, with doubt. I moved around to my desk and sat, the better to enjoy the show. Wolfe, who prefers his clients to get to the verb before the drama, made a small circling motion with one finger. "A week from Thursday," she said, "my firm is hosting an auction at the Pierre. It will be the largest sale we've ever conducted in New York. The catalogue has been out for months. The highlight of the sale, the crown jewel, is a lot of 12 bottles of 1921 Chateau d'Etoile from the Cellier Marchand collection. I assume that means something to you, Mr. Wolfe." "It means," he said, "that if you served such a wine at my table, I would suspect you of ulterior motives. Continue." "Last Friday," she said, "we held a pre-auction tasting for selected clients, a preview to encourage aggressive bidding. We opened one bottle of the d'Etoile. Only one. It should have been the event of the year. Instead," her jaw tightened. "Instead there was a problem." "Poison?" Wolfe asked. "No, that would have been simpler in a way. The wine was not deadly. If anything, it was too harmless. It was wrong." "Wrong how?" I put in. "It didn't say please and thank you." She turned her gaze on me. It was cool, but not frosty. "Have you ever seen a photo of a man you know well and thought, that's him, and yet it isn't? Same face, but something is off. The eyes, the angle of the mouth. That's how the wine tasted. It looked right. It had the right color, the right clarity, the right legs in the glass. But in the mouth, there was a note that shouldn't have been there. Thin, metallic almost, like—" She hesitated, searching. "Like a wine glass that rings too high." I felt that one all the way back to the dining room. Wolfe's brows lowered. "You are suggesting that your 1921 Chateau d'Etoile is counterfeit." "I am not suggesting it," she said. "I am terrified of it. There were 6 men in that room who know wine as well as anyone in the world. 4 of them tasted doubts. 2 of them voiced them. One of those 2 has been my rival for a decade, and he's already speaking to his clients. Quietly, discreetly, of course. Discreet ruin is still ruin." "You checked the remaining bottles," Wolfe said. "Of course. We examined the labels, the capsules, the corks on the unopened ones as far as we could without disturbing them. The provenance is impeccable. The bottles came directly from the Cellier Marchand family's cellar in Burgundy, with documentation going back 50 years. Everything is in order, on paper." She touched the bag again, lightly. "But after that tasting, the air is different. There's a smell of aroma, and rumor is more destructive than phylloxera. Pfui, metaphors." Wolfe shifted in his chair. "You have, I suppose, a battery of enologists, chemists, expertise." "Yes," she said. "I've had 2 independent laboratories analyze samples from the opened bottle. They tell me that the wine is a Bordeaux blend of great age, excellent structure, and superior quality, matching known profiles for d'Etoile of that era. They tell me the alcohol level is right, the acid is right, the volatile compounds are as expected. In short, they tell me what I already know, that science can't taste anxiety." Wolfe's lips twitched. It wasn't a smile, but it was something in the same neighborhood. "And yet you have come to me." "Yes." Her eyes held his. "Because you are not a scientist. You are a man who understands people. If this is a plot, it is not a plot by a molecule." "Flattery," he shrugged. "You wish me to determine whether your wine is genuine. That is infernal. I do not go to auctions. I do not leave this house. You are asking me to pronounce on a wine I have not drunk." "I assume that," she said. "So I brought one." That was when she opened the bag. It had been resting on her lap like a sleeping animal. Now she drew out a bottle wrapped in pale tissue and set it carefully on the edge of my desk. The glass was dark, the label browned with age but intact, the foil capsule dull red. "Number 7 of 12, she said. "Untouched." If I open it, it will reduce the lot and the sale value. But if I do not open it, and the rumors spread—" She lifted one shoulder, a small, helpless motion that didn't suit her. "I decided I would rather sacrifice one bottle than 12 years of work." Wolfe's gaze was on the bottle now. You haven't seen scrutiny until you've seen Nero Wolfe looking at something that might affect his gustatory universe. His nostrils flared. "You transported that through the streets of New York," he said almost accusingly. Very carefully. Archie." His eyes didn't leave the bottle. "Bring it here." I got up, picked it up like it was nitroglycerin, and carried it over to him. As I crossed the room, the glass of the bottle caught the light from the window and flashed once, sharply. It was nothing but sunlight, but I noticed Miss Vardas's eyes track it like she'd been expecting the flash. I set it on Wolfe's desk blotter within his reach. He didn't touch it yet. He leaned forward and studied it as if he intended to memorize every bubble in the glass. "You want to know if you're being sabotaged," he said finally. "If someone has switched your wine, or if someone has merely planted doubt about it. In either case, you are being attacked. By whom?" "I don't know," she said simply, "but I can tell you who had the opportunity. I suppose you'd call that your suspect list." "We'd call it that," I said. "We'd also call it where I come in." Wolfe ignored me. "Name them." "Within my firm," she said, "there are only 3 people with unrestricted access to the high-value storage. Myself, my partner, Philippe Leclerc, and our cellar master, Jean-Luc Marchand. Beyond that, there are a few possibilities. The Cellier Marchand family representative here in New York, a rival auctioneer, Martin Devereux, and possibly, though I hate to admit it, one of the collectors who attended the tasting. They are the only ones who knew in advance about the Détoile Lot and who benefit from any damage to its reputation." Wolfe grunted. 5 or 6, too many. I do not like diffused malice. It lacks flavor. He drummed his fingers once on the arm of the chair. "My fee," he said, "will be $25,000. Payable whether I confirm the wine's authenticity or demonstrate the contrary. Payable also if I merely identify the source of your, what did you call it? Doubt. Do you agree?" If the number rocked her, she didn't show it. "Yes," she said. "I agree." "Good. Archie will draft an engagement letter for your signature." I blinked. For Wolfe, this was a standing broad jump. He usually needs to be coaxed to accept anything that interferes with the steady flow of beer and orchid catalogues. When he hops on a case like that, there's always a reason beyond the decimal points. "Just a second," I said. "Not that I object to seeing the bank balance get healthier, but if you don't mind, what exactly are we agreeing to do? She says science already gave the wine a clean bill of health. You're not going to say we're better than chemistry." "We are," Wolfe said coldly. "Chemistry is blind to resentment, vanity, jealousy, the things that make men adulterate wine and everything else. Miss Vardas, I accept your case." She exhaled slowly. Some of the tension went out of her shoulders, but not much. "Thank you." "Do not thank me yet. I may prove that you are a fool, or that you are a victim. In either event, you may not like it. Archie will go to your office this afternoon. You will show him your storage, your records, your staff. He will interview your suspects." He said it like the word tasted sour. "You will send me a list of everyone who attended that tasting, with their connections and their histories as far as you know them. You will not speak to anyone else about consulting me. Not even Mr. Leclerc." She stiffened. "You think Philippe? I think nothing," Wolfe said. "I observe. Thinking is for later. For now, we prevent panic. Panic is the enemy of reason, and I work for reason." She studied him for a moment, then nodded. "Very well. I will have the list sent over within the hour. You will leave the bottle here," he added. Her head came up. "Is that necessary?" "For me, yes," he said. Perhaps I may learn something from it. Perhaps not. Either way, it will be safer in my basement than in yours, if there is mischief afoot. She hesitated, then reached for her bag instead of the bottle. Money changed hands. She wrote a check, Philippine paper, whispering softly on Wolfe's blotter. I took it, noted the number, and filed it in the safe mentally before I filed it physically. When she rose, Wolfe did not. He only inclined his head an inch, which is his version of a curtsy. I walked her to the door. In the hallway, she paused. "Mr. Goodwin," she said, "does he always accept a case this quickly?" "Quickly," I said. "You must have confused him with someone else." That was the extended play, slow-motion edition. Usually he just grunts once for yes and twice for no. She gave a brief, real smile. "Well, I hope his yes is as effective as his reputation says." "That depends on whether the world cooperates," I told her, "and it rarely does. But we'll do our best to make it wish it had." She left with the same measured step she'd arrived with. I watched her go to the corner through the glass, then shut the door and headed back to the office. Wolfe was alone with the bottle. He had turned it slightly so the label caught the light, and he was scowling at it as if it had told him beer was off the market. "Well," I said, resuming my seat, "you've let a wine war into the house, and before dessert. You're slipping." "Bah!" He waved a hand. "Do not dramatize. It is not war, it is intrigue." "And you're fond of intrigue now?" "She says chemistry couldn't find a thing wrong. What makes you think you can beat a lab?" "I do not intend to beat a lab. I intend to beat a man. Or a woman." His eyes moved from the bottle to me. "You will go to her office at 3. 3. I checked my watch. "That gives me an hour and a half to prepare. Should I study up on the vintage charts or just practice making toasts in French?" "You will do neither. You will observe. You will listen." His voice took on that heavy, patient tone he gets when he's reminding himself why he keeps me around. "You will find out who resents Miss Vardas, who envies her, who fears the success of this sale. Sabotage is expensive, Archie. No one pays for it without expecting a profit." "And you already think sabotage is what we're looking at?" He closed his eyes and leaned back. For a moment I thought the ride was over. Then he said, "The glass rang twice." I blinked. "The what did what?" "In the dining room," he said. "When the bell rang, the wine glass sang. Twice. Once is nothing. Twice is a pattern. When something vibrates to an external stimulus, Archie, it is because they share a resonance. You're telling me the front door bell and Fritz's stemware are in cahoots?" "I'm telling you," he said calmly, "that Miss Vardas and her bottle arrived 20 minutes early. That suggests impatience or fear. The wine in my glass changed when she rang my bell. It is thinner than it was when Fritz poured it. That suggests that something in this house, or approaching it, has disturbed more than my schedule." I stared at him. "You got all that from the way the glass chimed?" "No." His eyes opened, sharp and dark. "I got a question. Questions are the only honest currency in this world. Answers are counterfeit until proven otherwise." "Sure," I said. "Fine. But that still doesn't explain why you jumped at the case like it was a truffle. You can tell me you're interested in the human factor. You can tell me sabotage offends your sense of order. But there's something else." "There is always something else, Archie," he said. "If there were not, life would be intolerable. Go and make the arrangements with Miss Vardas, and tell Fritz that lunch is concluded. He will fret. That'll be the modest understatement of the day." I got up and headed for the door. "Anything else I should add to my to-do list? Pick up a portable spectroscope. Learn to gargle Bordeaux." "Do not be an ass," he said. "Just use your eyes and your ears. The wine glass rang twice. I wish to know why." He closed his eyes again. The bottle sat on his desk, mute and dark. If it had secrets, it was going to be a long afternoon before it decided to sing them. I went out to call Miss Vardas's office and tell them that Nero Wolfe, having heard a faint chime in a wine glass, had decided to stick his neck out, for a fee, into the genteel slaughterhouse of the wine trade. It wasn't the strangest reason he'd ever taken a case, but it was certainly the most musical. I gave Lon Cohen a call out of habit, strictly reflex, the way you reach for the railing when you're halfway down a staircase and remember you don't like falling. But halfway through dialing, I reminded myself we weren't dealing with murder, mayhem, or municipal corruption. This was wine world warfare, and Lon's column didn't exactly run a section called The Daily Grape. So I hung up, grabbed my hat, and got moving. I checked in on Wolfe before heading out, mostly to confirm he wasn't planning any last-minute detours, like deciding he needed me to fetch a book from the attic or grease a hinge he'd suddenly developed feelings about. He hadn't budged an inch. The bottle sat on his desk like a quiet witness waiting to be sworn in. Wolfe's eyes were closed, but don't let that fool you. He was listening to the world breathe. "I'll be back around 5, I said. "If anything explodes while I'm gone, it wasn't me." "Nothing will explode," he murmured, "unless someone is unusually clumsy. Go." That was as affectionate as he gets before beer o'clock. The ride downtown was standard mid-afternoon Manhattan. 2 honks, a jaywalker with a death wish, and a taxi driver who had strong opinions about the Yankees' pitching rotation. I arrived at the Vardas and Leclerc building on East 56th with my nerves intact and my shirt unwrinkled. Both victories. Inside, the lobby had that quiet, chilled elegance you only get when the rent is obscene and the management likes it that way. The receptionist looked like she could quote auction prices in her sleep and would have no trouble telling me to get lost if I looked disorderly. Fortunately, I'd cleaned up nice. "Mr. Goodwin," she said. "Miss Vardas left instructions. You may go up, 3rd floor." The elevator opened onto a space that could have been an art gallery if it weren't for the glass cabinets full of bottles that looked too dignified to drink. Everything was sleek, bright, expensive, and quiet. Suspiciously quiet. Elena Vardas didn't make me wait. She came out of her office, composed but tight around the edges. "Thank you for coming," she said. "Mr. Wolfe works fast." "That's one interpretation," I said. "Let's get the tour started before he decides he needs something absurd, like a comparison bottle from the 1880s. She gave a brief smile. "This way." Her office was airy, tastefully furnished, and had a single framed photo on the desk, her with an older man whose grin was brighter than the wineglass he held. Nothing else personal. Either she was private or she'd cleaned house before inviting a detective inside. We started with the storage room. It wasn't some dank cellar with cobwebs and rusty keys. It was more like a wine bank vault. Temperature locked, humidity regulated, alarmed, and watched by exactly one camera pointed straight at the main aisle. "This is the high-value section," she said. "Access requires a card and a PIN." "Who has both?" "Myself, Philippe Leclerc, and Jean-Luc Marchand." "And how often do deliveries happen?" "Once every 2 weeks. The Cellier Marchand lot arrived 3 months ago." I took a look around. The rows were impeccably organized. Bottles rested in individual cradles, tagged and logged. If someone had tried monkey business here, they'd have needed nerves of steel and hands carved by angels. "Where's the opened bottle from the tasting?" "In the lab, this way." The lab turned out to be a small, immaculate room with 2 refrigerated cabinets and a table covered in glassware that made me feel underdressed. On the table was a single, half-empty bottle, its cork replaced, its shoulders dusty. I gave it a long look. Nothing obviously wrong. But then again, the whole problem was that nothing obviously wrong was wrong in exactly the wrong way. "Do you trust the people who were at that tasting?" I asked. Her eyes flicked to me. "Trust? In business? You're joking." "I have my moments. All right, run me through the 5 people you're worried about, names and flavors." "Philippe Leclerc," she began. "My partner. Brilliant with clients, terrible with finances. He hates that this sale puts me in the spotlight. I mentally underlined that. Jean-Luc Marchand, she continued, our cellar master, devoted to the craft, knows wine better than I do. But he's prickly, proud, easily offended. Good. We like prickly. She gave me a look, but continued. Henri, cellier, family representative, charming but restless. He's been pushing aggressively for the bottles to go to auction instead of private sale. Profit motive noted. Martin Devereux, she said next. Her voice cooled. My rival. He would love nothing more than to see me humiliated. And the last? Anthony Cole, collector, wealthy, new money. He wants the Détoile low desperately, almost obsessively. Enough to sabotage it? I don't know. I let that simmer. We finished the tour with her office files. Everything was clean, neat, professional, maybe too neat. No stray invoices, no loose notes, not even an abandoned pen. Either she was meticulous or she'd swept the place before coming to see Wolfe. I was about to ask another question when she glanced toward the doorway. Just for a second, but enough to tell me someone had entered the suite. Who's that? I asked. Philippe, she said. She didn't sound thrilled. A moment later he appeared. Tall, handsome, effortlessly graceful in a tailored suit that probably cost more than my month's rent. His smile was warm, but his eyes were cool and calculating. Elena, he said smoothly. Then, noticing me, and who is this? Archie Goodwin, I said. I'm the legwork department. Ah, he said, extending a hand. The detective. She told me she was consulting someone. I didn't realize it would be quite so American. Most things are, I said, shaking his hand. His grip was perfect, firm, controlled, friendly in a way that made me check for missing fingers afterward. Old trick of the polished operator. Philippe, Elena said sharply, we're in the middle of something. So I see. His gaze drifted to the files on her desk. I hope I'm not interrupting. You are, I told him pleasantly, but she'll get over it. He smiled again, but it tightened at the corners. I'll leave you to your inquiries, he said softly. But Elena, be careful. When you hire someone to investigate, the investigation can go places you didn't expect. He left with a gentle click of the door. I turned to her. Well, he's a bouquet. He's dangerous, she said quietly. Not violent, but ambitious. And ambition is the most corrosive acid in the wine business. That's an interesting choice of metaphor, I said. You should hear Wolfe complain about metaphors. She didn't answer. Her eyes were on the door, and suddenly I felt it. The same faint vibration I'd heard in the dining room when she rang the bell. Not a sound this time, but something in the air tightening, the way a room feels when someone's been listening at a keyhole. Something here was off-key. Miss Vardas, I said, one more question before we go any further. She looked at me. Who knew you were coming to see Wolfe today? Her pause told me more than any answer would have. She didn't answer at first. Her gaze drifted again toward the door where Philippe had disappeared, as though the air he left behind carried an aftertaste. When she looked back at me, the hesitation was thin but definite, like the tremor in the wineglass that had started all this. No one, she said. No one knew. That, I told her, is never true. Someone always knows. Even if it's just the person you passed in the hallway on the way out. She shook her head. I didn't tell Philippe. I didn't tell Jean-Luc. I didn't tell anyone at the office. I made the appointment privately. I came here by cab, paid in cash. That's all very cloak and dagger, I said. Not that I mind being the dagger, but it means you were already acting like someone was watching. Her shoulders lifted and settled. I wanted to eliminate variables. Sure, I said lightly, and all you eliminated was the chance of an alibi. If something's happening under your roof, secrecy won't save you. Her lips tightened and she turned away. just for a breath, but enough to tell me she didn't like how close the comment had landed. I let it sit. Silence can be a useful tool, especially with someone whose entire business depends on reading subtleties. After a moment, she exhaled, and I saw the stiffness leave her posture. "You're right," she said. "I was cautious, maybe too cautious, but the auction means everything to me, and the idea that someone inside, might be undermining it." Her voice thinned. I didn't want to believe it. "Believing things is Wolfe's line," I told her. "Mine is seeing them, and what I'm seeing is that someone here already guessed you were worried about that wine before you said a word to anyone." She didn't argue. That alone was interesting. I walked to her office door, opened it, and scanned the wide corridor. Glass walls, immaculate floors, quiet enough to hear ambitions breathing. It was a place where gossip would wear designer shoes. "Let me take a walk around," I said. "You stay put. If anyone asks what I'm doing, tell them I'm here to audit your lighting fixtures." She almost smiled. "Mr. Goodwin, be careful what questions you ask. The wine trade has sharp edges." "I carry bandages." I stepped out and shut the door behind me. The hallway had 4 offices, a conference room with a round table big enough to coronate someone, and a side corridor that led toward a smaller, dimmer wing. That suggested storage or low-ranking employees, places people hope investigators won't wander. I wandered. The first door I passed opened before I even knocked. A man stepped out, maybe mid-50s, with a lean, bookish face and the kind of seriousness you usually see on violinists and surgeons. His expression said he disapproved of something. Me, most likely. "Can I help you?" he asked. French accent, soft but sharp. "Depends," I said. "You Jean-Luc Marchand?" "Yes." His eyes flicked to my shoes, then to my face, then to the direction I'd come from. Miss Vardas did not mention expecting guests. "She didn't mention a lot of things," I said. "I'm just doing some air circulation. You're not with the auction house." It wasn't a question. "No, but I'm a friend of the family." His mouth compressed. "The family does not need friends. It needs truth. And you can supply it, if I choose." He stepped closer. Not aggressively, just enough to reclaim whatever territory he thought I'd borrowed. "The d'Etoile is fine. I know that wine. I know every wine. Anyone claiming otherwise is ignorant or malicious." "That's a strong stance," I said, "especially since your boss is worried." "Madame Vardas worries about shadows." His tone held something like disdain, or maybe fear wearing a tasteful disguise. "She lets doubt creep where discipline should be." "And the tasting last week?" "A circus," he said shortly. "Collectors who do not appreciate what they claim to love. Rivals who pretend to admire and secretly hope for disaster. I saw nothing wrong with the wine. Nothing. Well, someone did. That someone was Martin Devereux." Marchand's nostrils flared. "He has made a career of undermining Vardas and Leclerc. If he tasted metallic notes, perhaps he was tasting his own spite." That was more emotion than he'd shown yet. I made a mental note. Before I could ask more, footsteps echoed from behind him. A younger woman approached, carrying a clipboard and moving quickly enough to avoid being trapped in conversation. "Mr. Marchand," she said. "Mr. Leclerc asked for you in the front office." Marchand huffed. "He can wait." But he started walking anyway. As he passed me, he paused long enough to say, "Be careful, Mr. Goodwin. Wine is simple. People are not." "That's why I'm here." He left without another word. I continued down the corridor. The next door was ajar, revealing shelves of binders labeled with years dating back to the early 2000s. Nothing interesting on the surface. But the air was cooler. A vent hummed with the same soft vibration I'd felt earlier. Not audible, exactly. Just present. I stepped closer. The hum deepened, and something behind the shelves, something faint, metallic, gave a tiny, high ping. Not loud, not even clear, just enough to raise goose flesh. I leaned in, listening. Nothing. But the feeling was the same uncanny tremor as Fritz's wine glass. The same odd resonance Wolfe had hung his hat on. That made it interesting. I straightened, letting the hum settle back into ordinary HVAC background. Someone had installed something behind that wall. Something that vibrated when it shouldn't. I left everything untouched. There's a right time to poke at mysteries and a wrong time, and Wolfe had taught me the difference. When I returned to Elena's office, she stood near the window, arms folded. "Well?" she asked. "Well," I said, "someone here likes eavesdropping, and they've got a setup in the back corridor that hums like a tuning fork when certain people walk by." Her eyes widened. "What do you mean, setup?" "I mean," I said gently, "that someone in your building is listening to things they're not supposed to. And I'd bet your next auction catalog that the wrong person heard you doubting your own wine long before you told anyone." She didn't speak, but the color drained from her face in a careful, controlled way. Like someone who had practiced not reacting. "Miss Vardas," I said softly, "you're not dealing with rumor." I met her eyes. "You're dealing with an operation." She didn't flinch, but she drew in a slow breath that tightened her shoulders, as though bracing for impact. "An operation," she repeated. "You believe someone is spying on us?" "I don't believe it," I said. "I heard it. Or felt it, which in this business often means more. Some clever soul tucked a device into the back corridor. Something small, running quiet, probably wired behind the shelving. It reacts when someone walks near it. That's not air conditioning, and it's not structural settling unless your building was assembled by nervous violinists." Her hands closed around her elbows. "But who would plant something like that? Why?" "Pick a motive," I said. "You've got sabotage on the table, a high-profile sale in a week, rivalries that make soap operas look modest, and a bottle of d'étoile that's suddenly acting shy. Plenty of incentive." She walked to the desk, fingertips lightly touching the surface like she needed the reassurance of something solid. "I keep everything locked down. Philippe and Jean-Luc have access. Yes, but surveillance? Listening devices? That's madness." "Madness pays well in certain industries," I told her, "especially if someone wants leverage or intel. If you thought someone was messing with your wine before you talked to Wolfe, odds are they knew you suspected. That gives them time to prepare, misdirect, or double down." She turned back to me, eyes sharp now, not frightened, but calculating, as if she'd shifted from panic to strategy. "I need to know exactly what you found." "Later," I said. "Right now, I need you steady. Whoever set that up didn't intend to be discovered. If they get wind of my nosing around, they'll either dismantle it or use it." Her voice dropped. "Use it how?" "To stay ahead of you," I said. "To steer your suspicions. To set you up. Take your pick." She pressed her lips together but didn't argue. That alone was a sign she understood how deep into the maze we'd wandered. Before either of us could continue, a knock hit the office door. 3 quick raps, precise, like someone signaling competence instead of asking permission. Elena straightened, smoothing her expression into something professional. "Come in," she said. The door opened to reveal the last face I wanted right then. Devereux. Martin Devereux entered like a man prepared to buy the building and have the furniture removed before lunch. Tall, impeccably groomed, with a smile that had been sharpened for social dueling. If charm could be carbonated, he'd be a vintage champagne. "Elena," he said warmly. "I stopped by to finalize Wednesday's preview arrangements." His gaze slid to me. "Ah, company." "Goodwin," I said, giving him a polite nod. "Legwork associate." "Of course." His eyes twinkled with just enough condescension to remind me I wasn't his social equal. Not that I'd applied. "I'd heard you'd resorted to private help, Elena. Things must be tense." Elena didn't move a muscle, which was impressive. We're investigating routine security concerns. Routine? Devereaux let out a gentle, sympathetic laugh. My dear, there's nothing routine about losing the trust of your buyers. Funny, I said. I didn't know the tasting had produced a loser. His eyes flicked toward me. The smile didn't shift, but the temperature behind it dropped 10 degrees. I'm sorry. Do you have experience in the wine trade? Only the parts where people lie, I said. Turns out they overlap nicely. Elena stepped in before he could reply. Martin, is there something specific you needed? Yes, he said smoothly, reclaiming the floor. To ensure the D'Etoile Low is still part of the auction. He turned the full wattage of his charm on her. Rumors are swirling. Buyers are nervous. If the lot is unstable, it's stable, she cut in. He lifted a brow. Is it? Forgive me, but at the tasting, 2 of us, 2 seasoned palates, expressed legitimate concerns. His gaze flicked to me again. You're not planning to open another bottle, are you? Elena exhaled, slow. What business is that of yours? The business of any serious collector, he replied. If you open another bottle, its value decreases. If you don't, skepticism increases. You're caught either way. I simply want transparency. And I want fewer interruptions, she said icily. If you have concerns about the auction, direct them through the proper channels. Devereaux's smile shifted subtly, less pleasant, more triumphant. Very well, I'll do that. He lingered a second longer, as if trying to read her face. Then he nodded politely and left, the door whispering shut behind him. Elena closed her eyes for a moment and inhaled. He thinks he's already won. No, I corrected. He thinks he's already set the stage. Big difference. She turned to face me fully. What do you suggest? First, I said, stop assuming everyone in this building is harmless. Devereux is playing the long game. Marchand is defensive enough to hide. Guilt or pride. Philippe is a question mark wearing a tailored suit. And somewhere in here, someone installed a device that picks up more than it should. She swallowed. And second, I said, I go tell Wolfe everything before the day gets any more interesting. He'll want to think, and he does that best when I'm not stepping on the carpet. She nodded, the resolve coming back into her posture. Go. I'll stay here, and I'll be careful. Be careful quietly, I said. If someone's listening, you don't want to give them a show. I left her office and rode the elevator down, the quiet hum in the walls suddenly far more meaningful than I liked. Whoever planted that device hadn't done it for fun. They were tracking something or someone, and I didn't have enough pieces yet to guess the picture. By the time I hit the sidewalk, the sky had shifted to late afternoon, the air heavy with the kind of humidity that makes New Yorkers irritable and cab drivers philosophical. I hailed a taxi anyway. 5 minutes into the ride, halfway between 56th and Wolfe's Brownstone, my phone buzzed. Unknown number, but the message was brief enough to be unmistakable. Stop digging. The wine is fine. You're not. I stared at the message long enough for the cabbie to check the rearview mirror twice. He must have decided I wasn't having a medical emergency, because he went back to threading traffic with the focus of a man who believed lane lines were decorative. The text didn't scare me, not in the way the sender hoped. It annoyed me. If someone wants to intimidate me, they shouldn't start with cheap theatrics and anonymous bravado. They should hire someone with a vocabulary. I saved the number before it could vanish and tucked the phone away. The message confirmed something important. Someone in the Varda's orbit believed I was close enough to be a threat, and that someone hadn't bothered pretending they didn't know I worked for Wolfe. Always flattering to be recognized. By the time the cab pulled up to the Brownstone, I'd sorted my thoughts into a coherent report, something Wolfe could bite into without spitting it back at me. Orchid time wasn't over yet. It never was at this hour. I let myself in, hung my hat, and headed straight to the office. He was already there. That was unusual enough to give me pause. Wolfe doesn't appear early for anything except beer, argument, or a threat to the brownstone. He sat in the big chair, eyes half-lidded, looking at the bottle of d'Etoile as though it had recited philosophy at him. "You're home soon," he said without opening his eyes. "Significant?" "You'll decide that," I said, dropping into my desk chair. "Let's start with the building. Vardas runs a tight ship, at least on the surface. Climate control, security locks, 3 authorized people with access to the vault. On paper, it's as clean as your conscience." "That comparison is specious," Wolfe murmured. "Proceed." "Someone installed a listening device behind a shelving unit in a back corridor. Not amateur work. Probably wired in during a renovation or disguised as equipment. It vibrates when someone walks by. Might be voice-activated. Either way, someone's eavesdropping." That got his eyes open. Not wide, but a flicker. "Crude," he said, "and dangerous." "Agreed. Secondly, your list of suspects is lively. Marchand, the cellar master, is defensive and prickly. Claims the wine is perfect. Would rather die than admit otherwise. Devereux showed up to rub salt in the wound and look innocent doing it. Philippe Leclerc is polished enough to sit in a showroom, but he's watching Elena closely. Wolfe grunted. "What did Miss Vardas tell you of his finances?" "Nothing," I said. "Not yet. But she hinted he's reckless with money, and he looked like the kind of man who sees opportunity in every crack, whether or not he created the crack." "And Miss Vardas herself?" Wolfe asked, finally leaning forward enough to show interest. "Smart. Too smart to let panic show. But she's scared. She was keeping her visit to you secret, paid cash for the cab, and claims nobody knew she was coming." Wolfe snorted. "No one is that discreet. Someone saw." "Yeah," I said. "Probably the same someone who texted me on the ride home." I passed him the phone. He took it, squinted, and handed it back. "Stop digging. The wine is fine. You're not," he recited disdainfully. "The prose is insipid. The punctuation is worse. But the intent is clear." He tapped a finger on the armrest. "They fear discovery." "They want the investigation shut down," I said, "which tells me we're on the right track, but they think I'm the weak link." "They are mistaken," Wolfe said. "But perhaps it is useful that they think so." I let that sit. The last time Wolfe used me as bait, I ended up in a broom closet with a bruised shin, a broken watch, and a confession from a burglar who cried when he talked about his mother. I wasn't eager for a sequel. "Well," I said, "if someone's monitoring the building, they probably know Elena's rattled. Devereux making his grand entrance didn't help. Marchand is ready to throw punches at any hint of disrespect. And Philippe—" I stopped. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. "Yes?" "There was a moment," I said. "When he saw us with the files, he made a comment about investigations going places she didn't expect. It was light, but it landed oddly." "Ambiguous," Wolfe said, "but unlikely to be meaningless." "It wasn't just the words," I added. "He watched her reactions. Closely. Too closely. As if he was waiting for something." He grunted again, deeper this time. "Motives converge. Sabotage. Control. Rivalry. Fear. And money," I said. "Always money." Wolfe shifted and let out a slow breath. "The listening device suggests planning, not impulsive malice, and sabotage of this scale, done subtly, implies an end goal beyond mere embarrassment." "Cutting the auction off at the knees," I suggested. "Tormenting Elena, or maybe forcing her to cancel the sale and take a hit." Wolfe raised a finger. "Or inducing her to sell early, quietly, cheaply. Fair is a potent pressure." I blinked. A forced sale. Someone could make a fortune buying d'Etoile at a discount before rumors take full bloom. "And who," Wolfe asked softly, "would benefit from that?" That's the million-dollar question, I said. Devereux wants her humiliated. But does he want the wine? Philippe might want control of the company. Marchand might want revenge for something I haven't found yet. And Anthony Cole, the collector, wants the bottles desperately, obsessively. Wolfe closed his eyes, thinking. That meant the gears were turning at full steam. Archie, he said finally, we must narrow the field. Tomorrow morning we will interview the cellar master. Not at their office. Here. Invite Marchand into the brownstone, I said. You sure you want him breathing your air? He will survive it. And if he is guilty, he will betray himself under my scrutiny. And if he's innocent? He will provide me with something more valuable than truth, Wolfe said. Context. I leaned back. All right. I'll call Elena and arrange it. No, Wolfe said sharply. Do not call. The listener may intercept. You will visit her in person. Tonight. I frowned. Is that wise? Whoever texted me might be watching. Precisely, Wolfe said. Let them watch. Let them believe you are off balance. It will lull them, and I need you to convey something face to face that cannot be heard by mechanical ears. I waited. Wolfe's gaze sharpened. Tell Miss Vardas that under no circumstances is she to open another bottle of Détoile. Not one. That is crucial. Because, he said, lowering his voice, someone is counting on her to do so. The bottle on his desk seemed to pulse in the dim light, its dark glass hiding more than wine. And suddenly I understood why the glass had rung in the dining room, why Wolfe had accepted the case without hesitation, why the sabotage felt like theater with an invisible director. Archie, Wolfe said, the key to this case is not the wine. No? I asked. His eyes gleamed. It is the fear of the wine. I didn't bother arguing with Wolfe about the wisdom of strolling back into Vardas territory while a mystery technician monitored the walls. When Wolfe says go, he means it, and arguing only earns you vocabulary lessons you didn't ask for. I left the office, grabbed my hat again, and stepped outside into an evening that had decided to be warm and irritated about it. The cab ride back to 56th was quicker than before. Either the traffic gods were in a good mood, or they wanted me back in the line of fire. I tipped the driver, checked the sidewalks for any characters who looked like they had nothing better to do than shadow legmen, and headed in. The lobby was quieter than earlier. Too quiet. The receptionist wasn't at her desk, maybe on break, maybe abducted by someone who wanted to return the wine world to its natural state of petty rivalry and inflated adjectives. I punched the elevator button and listened to it groan its way down. At the third floor, the door slid open and I stepped into that bright, temperature-controlled expanse again. The air felt still. Not silent. Still. As in watching. Elena's office door was closed. I knocked once and opened it without waiting. She was inside, standing by her desk with her phone in her hand, the cord of tension around her so tight she might have snapped if I spoke too loud. Mr. Goodwin? Relief flickered, then faded just as fast. You're back sooner than I expected. I'm ahead of schedule, I said. Blame Wolfe. He had thoughts. That's never simple. No, I agreed. Never. She gestured me in and shut the door behind us. What did he say? He said fear is the key. And before you ask, no, I can't unpack that yet because he hasn't. But he gave a very specific order. Under no circumstances are you to open another bottle of the Détoile. Not here, not at a tasting, not for a priest performing last rites. She stared at me, searching my face for some hidden meaning. He's certain. When Wolfe is certain, the universe usually adjusts to accommodate him. She set the phone down and pressed her palms against the edge of her desk. All right, I trust his judgment. I'd like to say that puts you ahead of the curve, I told her. But trusting Wolfe is usually an act of necessity, not confidence. A wry smile surfaced, but only briefly. Did he give any reason? Not yet, I said. But he will, and he wants Marchand at the brownstone tomorrow morning. Her brows lifted. Jean-Luc? Bright and early. Preferably before coffee, because he'll need all his senses sharp if Wolfe starts picking at the seams. She paced once, stopping near the window. He won't like that. Perfect, I said. A relaxed suspect is dull. I caught movement through the office door's frosted glass. A blurred figure passed by, quick, deliberate, and pointedly not pausing. Elena noticed it too and stiffened. Do people usually take late strolls around the office? I asked. Not usually, she said quietly. The knob rattled a moment later. Then the door opened without a knock, and Philippe Leclerc stepped in like a man who believed locks and boundaries were things that happened to other people. Elena, he said, voice smooth enough to butter toast. I need a word. He noticed me. The warmth in his smile cooled a degree. Mr. Goodwin, you're becoming a fixture. I grow on people, I said, like ivy or mold. Philippe ignored the jab and turned to Elena. I'd appreciate a moment alone. She didn't move. If it concerns the auction, you can speak in front of him. His jaw tightened. Not much, but enough for me to mark the moment with a gold star. It concerns the future of this company, he said, and discretion would serve both of us. Elena crossed her arms. Say what you want to say. Philippe exhaled, long-suffering, as though he was indulging her. The situation with the Détoile is spiraling. Rumors are spreading faster than truth. We need to make a decision immediately, whether to withdraw the lot or move it to private sale. You mean panic, I said. You want to panic early so you can brag about your foresight later. He shot me a look polite enough to qualify as murder in some cultures. My concern is stability. And mine, Elena said, is not letting fear dictate terms. Philippe stepped closer. Too close. Elena, the collectors are whispering. The Cellier family has already asked for reassurances. If we mishandle this, everything we've built, everything could collapse. I studied him. His hands were empty, his expression earnest, but there was an urgency in him that didn't fit the panicked partner routine. It was sharper, tighter, like someone needing something to break. Fast. Funny, I said lightly. You're awfully eager to shut down an auction that hasn't failed yet. His gaze flicked to me, annoyed by my continued existence. I'm realistic. You're scared, I corrected. He drew in a breath, preparing something eloquent, and that's when it happened. A thin, clear ping echoed from the hallway. Not loud, almost musical, like a wine glass being struck. Elena's head whipped toward the sound so fast you'd think she'd been trained for it. Philippe's reaction was different. He froze. Not startled, not confused, frozen. That was the reaction of a man whose brain was sprinting through calculations, rewriting the script on the fly. I turned toward the open doorway, expecting to see someone dropping glassware or tapping a cabinet. But the hallway was empty. The sound had not been made by glass, or metal, or anything visible. It had come from the air, the same pitch I'd heard earlier behind the shelving, the same resonance as Fritz's glass in the dining room. Something in this building was reacting again, and this time, reacting at the exact moment tensions peaked. Philippe recovered first. He straightened, smoothed his jacket, and said too evenly, I should return to my office. He left without waiting for permission. When the door closed, Elena looked at me. Her face was pale, her voice low. Mr. Goodwin, what was that? I walked to the doorway, listening. Nothing now, just the faint hum of climate control. But the earlier ping had been undeniable and deliberate. Miss Vardas, I said slowly, I think whoever planted that listening device didn't just want to hear things. I stepped back into her office. They wanted to signal someone. Her pulse fluttered visibly at her throat. Signal who? I met her eyes. Whoever's working with them on the inside, Elena pressed a hand to the edge of her desk as if steadying herself against a shift in gravity. "Inside," she whispered. "You mean Philippe?" "Maybe," I said. "Maybe not. But you noticed the timing. That ping happened the instant he pushed you to pull the lot. Coincidence doesn't take cues that well." She swallowed hard. "But he didn't react. He froze." "Right," I said. "If you don't expect a signal, you jump. If you do expect one but weren't ready for it, you freeze. It's the brain trying to reconcile reality with a plan someone didn't rehearse enough." Her expression tightened, not with fear, but with something sharper, hurt mixed with the beginning of anger. She stared past me, toward the now empty hallway, as if Philippe had left a shadow behind. "Mr. Goodwin," she said quietly, "I need honesty. Could Philippe be trying to take the company from me?" "I don't know yet," I said. "But he's trying to take control of this crisis. That alone makes him interesting." "But I have controlling shares," she murmured. "He couldn't force me out unless—" She stopped herself. A thought had landed, and she didn't like where it came from. "Unless he proves negligence," I finished for her, "or convinces the Cellier family you mishandled their wine, or pushes the board to believe you jeopardized the sale. Fear makes people vote strange ways." Her hand lowered from the desk. "I didn't think he would ever—" "People don't do things," I said gently, "until they're given a chance and a motive big enough to drown their conscience." She didn't answer, but I didn't expect her to. Grief takes its time, even when the person isn't dead. "Listen," I said, "we're not finished yet. That ping didn't just happen. It meant something. And I want to know what it meant before we leave tonight." "We?" she echoed, straightening. "Yes," I said. "Wolfe sent me here for a message. I delivered it. Now I'm following my instincts. If someone is planting signals in your office, we don't walk away from it." She nodded once, tight, determined. "Where do we start?" "The corridor," I said. We stepped out into the hallway together. It looked harmless. Bright lights, polished floors, glass offices reflecting tasteful restraint. But the silence carried a shape now, like a room holding its breath. I moved toward the shelving corridor where I'd felt the faint vibration earlier. This time, Elena followed a step behind me, her heels soft but steady. When we reached the dimmer stretch beside the storage, binders, I slowed. The hum was there again, faint, steady, deliberate. Something alive behind the wall. "Is anyone supposed to work back here now?" I asked. "No," she said. "We keep archived files here. Nothing active." "Who accesses it?" "Mostly me. Sometimes Jean-Luc. Rarely Philippe." "Rarely," I said. She hesitated. "He dislikes confined spaces." "Convenient," I said. "But I don't buy it." I crouched near the shelving and put a hand lightly against the wall. A faint vibration tickled my palm, barely noticeable, but unmistakably artificial. "You feel this?" I asked. She leaned closer, touched the wall and drew back slightly. "Yes. What is it?" "That," I said, "is someone listening, or signaling, or both." The hallway behind us clicked softly, the distant sound of an elevator arriving. I straightened. Elena tensed. Footsteps approached, measured, firm, unhurried. Philippe. He rounded the corner, holding a folder under one arm, his face arranged in an expression that tried a little too hard to be casual. "There you are," he said lightly. "I thought you had left." "I don't vanish that easily," I said. "Have to disappoint people slowly." He gave a dry smile. "Elena, a quick question about the asset movement schedule." His voice trailed off. Not because of what he saw us doing, but because he suddenly realized what he hadn't expected to see at all. Elena standing beside me, not flustered, not distressed, but watchful. He recovered quickly, a half-second adjustment only trained eyes would notice. "What are you doing back here?" he asked. tone carefully neutral. "Checking your feng shui," I said. "The place resonates wrong." His eyes flicked just once toward the shelving. It was the barest glance, a reflex, a betrayal of attention. But I caught it, and Elena did too. Her gaze snapped to him. "What is behind these shelves, Philippe?" she asked. The question was direct, sharp, and not the kind she'd ever fired at a partner before. I could see him registering that, the shift in tone, in stance, in the balance between them. "There's nothing," he said smoothly. "Just infrastructure." "Show me," she said. The pause that followed was clean and crisp, just long enough to betray reluctance, just short enough to remain deniable. "Elena," he said quietly, "I don't see why—" "That wasn't a request," she said. Her voice was colder than I'd heard it yet, cold enough that Philippe's posture changed. He turned to the shelving, bracing the edge with one hand. "This unit is bolted," he said. "We'd need tools." "No," I said. "We need angles." I stepped around him, found the seam near the lower right corner, and pressed upward. The shelf didn't budge. I moved higher, still nothing. Then I tried the side panel. It gave slightly. Not outward, inward. I froze. "Elena," I murmured, "you ever see shelving that opens like a door?" Her breath caught. "Never." Philippe stepped forward quickly. "This is absurd. You're damaging—" "No," I said. "I'm revealing." I pushed again. This time the panel eased inward with a soft click. Not a lot, just an inch, but enough for me to see the thin sliver of metal behind it. Shiny, new, out of place. Elena leaned in, eyes widening. Philippa didn't move. He didn't breathe. Then, very quietly, he said, "I wouldn't do that." The tone wasn't a warning. It was a threat. Elena slowly lifted her head toward him, shock draining into something harder, betrayal, dawning and undeniable. "Philippe," she whispered, "what have you done?" He didn't answer. But he didn't need to. Because a soft, mechanical chirp sounded behind the panel, one I hadn't heard before. Not a ping, a timer. The chirp was soft. Too soft for the dramatic possibilities my imagination instantly tried to assign to it. If it had been louder, sharper, or accompanied by flashing lights, at least I could have yelled, "Get back!" and made myself look heroic. Instead, it was the sort of polite, mechanical reminder you get from an oven when your soufflé is about to collapse. Elena didn't move. Not forward, not backward. Philippe did neither. I did both. Half a step back to see their faces, half forward to keep myself between them and whatever was humming behind that panel. The chirp came again, a tiny, insistent beep like a heartbeat being timed. "Philippe," I said calmly, "you've got 5 seconds to explain why a wall in your office building is counting." His throat bobbed. A twitch crossed his jaw, one I'd seen earlier when Devereaux strutted through like he owned the place. The same twitch, but now without the mask. "It's—" He stopped. His eyes darted to Elena, and in that moment I knew he wasn't trying to figure out how to lie. He was trying to figure out whether it was worth it. Another soft beep. Elena whispered, "Tell me." "It isn't dangerous," he said abruptly. Too abruptly. "Nothing explosive, nothing harmful. It's a trigger, a relay. For a signal." "What signal?" I asked. His answer came too fast again. "It's for security, a backup line." "Try again," I said. Elena stepped toward him, not close enough to touch, but close enough to make the air between them shrink. "Philippa," she said, "you've been like family. If you're in trouble, tell me." The next beep filled the silence. He closed his eyes briefly, then opened them with a different look. Tired, defeated, cornered. "It's not mine." "Meaning?" I pressed. "It's Marchand's." That earned him my best skeptical stare. "The cellar master moonlights as an electrician? Try again. But his face had changed. He wasn't lying to dodge anymore. He was revealing to survive. Elena, he said. Jean-Luc installed it last spring. He told me it was a humidity alert system, a redundancy. He said the building needed it. I didn't question him. He's been doing this longer than either of us. That's not a humidity monitor, I said. That's a relay for remote activation, or signals, or notifications, Philippe said. Yes? I figured that out a month ago. A month, Elena repeated. You knew? No. He lifted a hand, pained. I suspected. I confronted him. He insisted it was harmless, but then the tasting happened, the rumors, the pressure. He closed his eyes again. I should have told you. The beeping stopped. Not faded, stopped. Clean and crisp, as if someone had flipped a switch. That silence was worse than the sound. Elena moved first, stepping back from both of us, as though distance might slow the consequences. What does that mean? She whispered. Why did it stop? I didn't know. And not knowing is rarely something I admit aloud, but her eyes were on me like I was the only anchor in the room. So I answered honestly. It means someone heard enough. Before another word could be traded, footsteps echoed. Fast, purposeful, heading our way. Not Philippe's smooth glide or Devereux's theatrical entry. These were firm and determined. Marchand. He appeared at the far end of the corridor, his expression carved from granite. He wasn't carrying anything, which was the only reason I didn't step between him and Elena outright. Jean-Luc, she said, voice raw. What have you done? I've protected us, he replied. His tone was steady, too steady. From ruin. By spying on us, she fired back. By planting devices in the walls? He shook his head. Not spying, safeguarding. You don't understand the stakes. The Cellier family. Don't, she said, stepping toward him. Don't lie. His jaw tightened. I don't lie. I warned Philippe months ago. I warned him that the sale was too large, too visible. I told him certain collectors, certain rivals, would stop at nothing to undermine the auction, to steal the wine's reputation before the bidding even began. And so you... What? I cut in. Set up a listening post like you were guarding national secrets? He met my eyes without flinching. You don't know this world, Mr. Goodwin. Wine is power. Wine is legacy. Thieves come in suits and use doubt as their crowbar. If someone in the building was acting against us, I needed to know. Who gave you the idea, Jean-Luc? I asked. You don't strike me as a gadget hobbyist. His nostrils flared. I installed it because I realized the simplest truth. Sabotage had to come from within. Philippe was reckless. Devereux was circling. The Cellier representative was growing impatient. I needed to know who was talking to whom, who was planning what. And you decided, I said slowly, to be the unseen heir. Yes. Elena's voice cracked. All this time, Jean-Luc trusted you. You trusted too easily, he said, and for the first time, there was something brittle in his voice. And now the wine is contaminated. It isn't, I said sharply. We're not talking about the wine. We're talking about you. His face flickered. That wasn't the reaction of guilt over sabotage. It was fear. Elena, he said suddenly, urgently, you must cancel the auction. Why? I demanded. What's coming? His panic sharpened. If you don't, everything falls apart. You don't understand. There are people watching the sale, people who will ruin you. And if the d'étoile is questioned, it was questioned, she said, but not by the wine. He froze. That was all I needed. You weren't protecting her, I said quietly. You were protecting the auction, the legacy, the idea of perfection. You built a fortress and forgot the people inside it. No, he said softly. No, I built it to keep the wolves out. You got one in, I said. Yourself. He backed a step away. I didn't sabotage anything. He stopped, because behind him, from deeper in the dim corridor, a sound emerged. Not a beep, not a ping, a soft scrape, as though someone else was in the space behind the shelving, listening, waiting. Marchand turned toward the sound with a stiffness that didn't belong to a man merely startled. It was the reaction of someone who'd been dreading a particular noise for a long time, and hearing it meant something had gone wrong in a way he couldn't fix. Elena instinctively moved closer to me. Philippe took a single step back, not enough to look like retreat, but enough to put me between him and whatever was scraping behind that wall. I didn't blame him. For all my good intentions, I wasn't eager to find out what was waiting in the shadows, but someone had to at least pretend to be brave. The scrape came again, softer this time, as if whoever or whatever had made it didn't want to repeat the mistake of being obvious. "Who's back there?" I called out. My voice didn't echo. This corridor was too narrow, too padded with files and insulation for theatrics. Silence answered. Then a faint click. Marchand stiffened. "Don't move," he hissed. "Wrong person to say that to," I murmured back. "Try them." I tipped my head toward Elena and Philippe, but he wasn't looking at them. His gaze was fixed on the panel I'd nudged open, the one hiding the humming metal. "Jean-Luc," Elena said, voice taut. "Who else has access to this?" "No one," he said. "No one except me." That wasn't reassuring. If anything, it meant the scrape wasn't from someone invited. Someone had been using his hidden corridor without his knowledge, and Marchand wasn't the type to leave doors unlocked. The next sound wasn't a scrape or a click. It was breathing, not loud, but close. Too close. I stepped forward and put a hand against the panel again, pressing lightly, not to open it, just to test the air movement. A faint draft came through, a narrow shaft that shouldn't have had airflow at all. "Is that space big enough to crawl through?" I asked. Philippe shook his head too fast. "It's electrical housing. No one could fit." Marchand didn't answer. His face had gone pale. "Elena," he said urgently, voice trembling in a way I had not heard from him until now. "You need to leave. All of you need to leave." "And let whoever is behind that wall wander out?" I asked. Not my favorite plan. "You don't understand," he whispered. "They shouldn't be in there. That space is sealed from the other side." "Not sealed enough," I said. The breathing grew faint again, receding deeper inside the wall. Someone was retreating, running away through a tunnel none of us knew existed. "Marchand," I said sharply, "tell me how far the space runs." He swallowed. "Behind this corridor, past the archives, it wraps around the climate control lines for the vault." "In English," I said. "It runs directly behind the high-value storage room." "The room with the détoile." Elena gasped. "Someone was behind the vault." "Someone is behind the vault," I corrected, "and they just heard us." Philippe stepped back again, this time without pretending he wasn't retreating. "We need security." "No," I said. "No alarms, no phones, nothing loud. If we spook whoever's back there, we'll lose them, and we'll never find what they planted or took." "What do you mean took?" Elena whispered. "Think about it," I said. "If you wanted to sabotage a sale, plant a rumor, or swap out a bottle, how would you do it without being seen?" "You would go behind the vault," she breathed, "through the wall." "Yes, and the timing," she said, horror creeping in. "The tasting was weeks after the shipment arrived. Someone had time." "Yes. And the ping, those signals, those were warnings that I was getting close." "Yes." She covered her mouth. Marchand leaned heavily on the wall, his voice breaking. "I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. I only installed the relay. I didn't know there was access behind it." "Then someone used your paranoia," I said, "to build themselves a doorway." For a moment, no one moved. It was the kind of stillness that comes right before clocks strike or trains derail. Then I heard it. Far off now, a faint metallic rattle, followed by a thud. "Whoever it is," I said. "They're making for the vault." Philippe's jaw clenched. "We have to stop them." "We can't go through the wall," Elena said, shaking. "The climate structure is too delicate. If we puncture anything—" "I know," I said. "We go the long way." I turned and started toward the vault, and that's when the lights flickered. Just once. But once was enough. Not a power failure. A signal. A trigger. A warning. Marchand's voice cracked. "The backup controls if someone tampers with the humidity system." "The wine," Elena whispered. "The whole vault could be compromised," Marchand finished. I didn't wait for more. "Move!" I barked, grabbing Elena's arm, not roughly, but firmly enough to get her out of paralysis. "We get downstairs, now." Philippe followed, breath sharp. Marchand stumbled after us, as if the ground had suddenly tilted under his feet. We reached the main corridor, dashed past the offices, and rounded the corner toward the vault entrance. Just in time to hear a sound no one in the wine trade ever wants to hear. A soft, rapid sizzle, moisture, mist, pressure release. Elena's scream cut through the hall. "No! No!" We skidded to a stop at the vault door. A thin vapor was leaking from the seam, cool, white, chilling the air. Humidity. Too much. Way too fast. Enough to destroy labels, destroy corks, destroy provenance. Deliberate sabotage. Someone had triggered the emergency humidifier override. The d'étoile wasn't poisoned. It was drowning. "Get back," I said, grabbing Elena before she rushed forward. "The door's airtight. You can't open it until the system resets." She collapsed against the wall, shaking violently. "It'll ruin everything. The bottles will absorb moisture. The labels— oh God, the labels." "That's the point," I said grimly. Philippe was pale. "We have to shut it down." "No," Marchand choked. "We can't access controls from here. The override is inside. Someone is inside." I stared at him. "Inside the vault?" He nodded, voice trembling. "Through the wall, through the crawl space." A cold realization settled into place. The sabotage wasn't about switching the wine, I said. It was about destroying it. Elena's voice was a ragged whisper. "Who would do that? Who would want—" "Someone who thrives on fear," I said. "Someone who needs you panicked, desperate, willing to sell cheap or surrender control." Behind the vault door, the sizzle grew louder, rising, hissing, consuming. "Archie," Elena sobbed, grabbing my coat. "There are 12 bottles in there. 12— "I know," I said. And in that moment, with her shaking and Philippe useless and Marchand shattered, the entire twisted web snapped into one brutal, elegant line. "It's not the wine," I murmured. Wolfe was right. I stepped closer to the vault door. "It's the fear." A shape moved behind the frosted glass inset of the vault. Just a blur, but unmistakable. Someone inside. And they weren't done yet. The figure behind the frosted vault window didn't move again. Not visibly, just a blur caught between shadows and humid haze. I kept Elena behind me. She was shaking with the kind of grief only a ruined legacy can produce. Marchand stood rigid, white-knuckled, staring at the door as if willing it to confess. Philippe looked ready to faint or fight. I couldn't tell which. "Archie." Elena's voice cracked. "What do we do? What if they're breaking more? What if—" "You call Wolfe," I said. "Exactly once. Then you let him talk." I dialed. Wolfe answered with a grunt that meant I'd interrupted a beer. "Report," I told him. Fast. Precise. The vault, the sabotage, the figure inside, Marchand's device, the humidity spike. Every clue lined up like impatient dominoes. When I finished, Wolfe said one word. "Good." Good. That meant he had the answer. "Bring them here," he said. "All of them. Miss Vartas, Mr. Leclerc, Marchand, and you. The vault can resolve itself. People cannot. The perpetrator has made their final move. But someone's still inside. No, Wolfe snapped. They are gone. You will find no one in that vault. They were in. A distortion, he said sharply. Heat, vapor, fear. You saw the idea of a saboteur, not the saboteur. Bring them here immediately. Before I could argue, he hung up. That meant two things. He was ready, and the game was over. 10 minutes later, we were in a taxi heading toward the brownstone. Elena sat stiff as stone. Philippe kept wringing his hands. Marchand stared out the window like someone who expected to see ghosts in every reflection. Inside the office, Wolfe was waiting, not lounging, not dosing, but upright, alert, and ready to carve truth with surgical precision. "Sit," he ordered. The three suspects obeyed like schoolchildren caught with contraband. Wolfe pointed to the bottle of d'étoile still on his desk. "This," he said, "is genuine. Archie, fetch the cork and the chemical report." I did. But, Wolfe continued, a wine can be genuine and still be ruined. That was the point of the real sabotage. Marchand stiffened. "I did not—" "Silence," Wolfe thundered. "You installed a device that was used against you. I do not excuse your stupidity, but stupidity alone does not make you guilty." Philippe let out a breath of relief. "Premature." Wolfe's eyes locked onto him. "Mr. Leclerc, you wished to wrest control of the firm. For months you courted new investors. You hid debts, and you feared that success of the upcoming auction would secure Miss Vardas's position and remove any leverage you had." Philippe sputtered. "That's absurd." "Is it?" Wolfe asked. "You argued obsessively to withdraw the lot. You insisted she panic, because panic benefits you. It creates chaos, conditions in which a man like you thrives." Philippe opened his mouth, then shut it. "Smart move." "And you," Wolfe turned to Marchand, "were the perfect mule, proud, meticulous, offended by rivals. You installed the relay, believing it protected the vault. In truth, it gave someone a way in." Elena whispered, "Then who was inside my vault? Who triggered the humidity override?" "No one," Wolfe said. The room went still. "What do you mean, no one?" I asked. Wolfe sighed. "Archie, think. The relay Marchand installed connects through the wall to the vault's emergency humidity system. The device was never meant for listening. It was meant for activation. Remote activation." I stared. "So no crawl-space access? No person behind the wall?" "None," Wolfe said. "The scrape you heard was the relay's internal armature, shifting under heat load. The breathing was air movement caused by vapor pressure differentials. Your senses, acute though they are, were misled by expectation." "And the figure behind the glass?" Elena whispered. "A stress-induced pareidolia," Wolfe said. "The human mind will find shapes in fog when fear primes it." Silence swallowed the room. Elena trembled. "Then who planned the sabotage?" Wolfe lifted a finger. "The same man who insisted the auction be withdrawn, who pushed fear, who cultivated panic, who needed the vault compromise to force your hand." Philippe froze. "You," Wolfe said calmly, "are the saboteur." Philippe shot to his feet. "That's a lie. I was here with you." "A relay can be triggered by text message," Wolfe said. "Archie received one earlier. The number matches the one you used last month to place private offers on the Cellier collection. You panicked when Archie discovered the panel. You tried to deflect by blaming Marchand, and when that failed, your device did what it was built to do." Philippe's legs buckled. He collapsed into the chair, shaking. "It wasn't supposed to go that far," he whispered. "Just enough moisture to cast doubt. Not destroy everything. I needed leverage. I needed investors. He didn't finish. There was nothing left to finish." Elena buried her face in her hands. Marchand looked gutted. Wolfe rang for beer. "Archie," he said, "call Inspector Kramer." Philippe looked up, distraught. "Elena, please." She didn't look at him. When Kramer arrived, he took Philippe without ceremony. The door closed behind them with finality. Elena stood before Wolfe, her voice shaking but dignified. "Thank you." Wolfe nodded once. "You were fortunate. The bottles are intact. The humidity spike was brief. The labels may need attention, but the wine, your legacy, remains untouched." She nearly wept with relief. Marchand stepped forward. "I was fooled. I failed her." "Then redeem yourself," Wolfe said. "Run the auction flawlessly. Let the wine speak for itself." Elena gathered herself, nodded, and left with Marchand. When the door shut, Wolfe sagged a bit. I sat. "You okay?" He grunted. "Phew, fear is exhausting. Other people's, not mine." We sat in silence for a moment, letting the dust settle. Then Wolfe lifted the bottle of Détoile and regarded it with mild contempt. "A man who destroys what he claims to love," he said, "is the most pitiable of fools." "Agreed," I said. "But at least we stopped him." "Yes," Wolfe said, settling back, "and we earned our fee." "Fritz!" The kitchen door opened. "Dinner," Wolfe said with the satisfaction of a man returning civilization to order, "is to be served at once." I leaned back, hands behind my head. "The wine glass," I said, "only rang twice." He closed his eyes. 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 He closed his eyes.